1972, a widowed mother with 10 children disappears.
They dragged her out of the bathroom, and that was the last we ever seen of her.
Now, 40 years later, witness allegations are surfacing. Possible evidence in audio recordings locked away in a college archive. Until now.
I have never, ever, ever admitted being a member of the IRA. Never. I've just done it here.
Accounts that, if true, threaten a peace agreement. And the man credited with helping bring that peace to Northern Ireland, Gerry Adams, prominent Irish politician and alleged former head of the Irish Republican Army. Adams has vigorously denied the allegations, but many think the tapes could hold the key to solving the widow's murder and more. Most of their contents still secret. But maybe not much longer. Boston colleges' hard-hewn stone facades speak of academic achievement, tranquility. Yet hidden on this Massachusetts campus are some of Northern Ireland's darkest secrets. Locked inside its Burns Library are the Belfast Project archives, audio recordings from former paramilitary fighters, an oral history of atrocities and insights. Cataloguing from both sides of the divide 30 years of bitter sectarian fighting between Catholics and Protestants, known as the Troubles.
We were brought in and advised of what joining the IRA meant. Basically it boiled down to either you're going to jail or you're going to die.
Interviews so explosive, the contents were supposed to be kept secret until a participant died or waived confidentiality. The tapes, the secrets, now at the center of a legal battle in the United States. An ocean away, 15 years after most fighting ended, Belfast's battle-scarred streets in some of its toughest neighborhoods still cry out for those secrets. It's when you walk the streets here that you realize just how locked in the past these communities are. Constant reminders, these murals, just when they walk to the shops, of everything bad that happened before. It seems no one here really wants to let go of the past.
All I ever wanted was to know the reason why they killed my mother.
For Helen McKendry, the tapes in Boston may hold the truth about her mother, the key she needs to unlock her future. Her mother was Jean McConville, who was born a Protestant, married Arthur, a Catholic, a mixed marriage. Her killing, one of the most notorious of the Troubles.
At the very beginning of the Troubles, we were put out of our home. We lived in East Belfast, which was mainly Protestant, and my parents had a mixed marriage, so we had to leave. They threatened to kill my father.
Helen had 9 brothers and sisters. They found refuge in a Catholic neighborhood. Not long after, their father died, leaving Jean to bring them up alone.
When you come home from school, she was there with a cup of tea, some toast, going to bed at night. Mum was there, you know, just doing whatever every mother does. She was a happy-go-lucky person. She would have done anything to help anyone.
Outside their home, all hell was breaking loose. Protestant against Catholic. Houses burned, communities divided.
Every day you would see shooting, or heard shooting, and seen somebody being shot, injured, bombs going off all around us, and that's the way it was.
Northern Ireland is part of Britain. Protestant fighters, known as Loyalists, along with the police and army, were fighting to keep the status quo. Catholics, nationalists and Republicans were fighting to kick out the British and reunify all Ireland, with the Irish Republican Army, the IRA, at the forefront.
We just got used to living like that. We didn't think it was any different from anywhere else in the world, really.
But that changed the day the IRA took her mother away.
They came by tea time. They dragged her out of the bathroom and dragged her out.
It was December 1972, the last time Helen would see her, and the beginning of her quest for the truth. A quest she would get little help with until she met her future husband, Seamus, a few years later.
I made Helen a promise there and then that I would do everything in my power to find the truth.
They would need each other. They were up against the IRA.
Anybody, especially this organisation that people in the areas where I lived at the time would have looked up to, you know, seen them as some sort of heroes. But I couldn't believe that they'd actually trailed a mother of 10 young children out, blew her away.
We knew it was the IRA, but we went to people and asked questions, and we were told, you know, your mother, we had your mother, but she's gone now. Apparently they had let her go and she was in England and she would come home for us.
It was all lies. Decades were to pass, no sign of her mother. In 1998, the Good Friday Peace Agreement was signed. IRA and Loyalist paramilitaries laid down their weapons. Peace had come to Northern Ireland, but not to Helen.
I went public then to let the world know what these people were doing. I wanted to know where my mother was. I wanted her body back. I wanted an end to what we had to suffer for all those years.
Instead of answers, the super-secretive IRA turned to its well-worn tactic of intimidation. Helen's constant questions were making her enemies. She and her family were forced to flee their home.
Our children were beaten up, the car was destroyed. It was one threat after another. We couldn't sleep, we were just waiting on the door coming in and a bomb getting chucked in or somebody coming in and putting us to sleep forever, you know.
Finally, it was here on this lonely beach, more than 30 years after she disappeared, that Jean McConville's body was discovered in 2003. No one has been charged with her murder. Even in death, there was little peace for Jean McConville's family. She was buried in a quiet cemetery outside Belfast. The family say the IRA wanted her funeral kept low-key. Nothing can bring her back, heal the pain of lives soured by suffering. But for her daughter Helen, there may be salvation in the Boston College archives.
If the likes of these tapes, that might be the actual end, you know, if we can get someone to listen to the tapes and see who actually killed my mother, and if they are brought before court, then maybe that's the closure that I need.
I can understand Jean McConville's family's perspective on this matter, but I have a different constituency to protect. I have different ethos to protect. I don't think that academics should ever be turned into agents of the state or their research turned into material for the state.
Anthony McIntyre is the researcher who gathered the IRA interviews for the Boston College archive. He began 3 years after the peace deal.
I wanted to get as many historical voices out as possible and to give an insight into why people who would behave peacefully in a normal society turn to violent methods. Well, that was me back in 1988 in a very relaxed pose in the prison classroom.
McIntyre isn't just any researcher. He was in the IRA, spent more than a decade in the infamous Maze prison.
I got out at the very end of '92, December, the last week of December, '92, Christmas week.
After getting out, he earned a PhD and persuaded his former comrades the benefit of telling their stories.
I thought I was doing something good for the community, for society, and for academia, and the production of knowledge in general. I think it's also important from the point of view of truth recovery.
The agreement McIntyre made with his former IRA pals and Boston College, their interviews would be held until they were dead, because the IRA demands a vow of secrecy on pain of death.
Do you have a problem with committing all this to a secret tape to be used only after you have died?
I don't have a problem with that. If I did have a problem with that, I wouldn't be sitting here talking into a microphone.
This is the audio recording of McIntyre's interview with his former IRA cellmate Brendan Hughes. First broadcast several years after his death in 2008.
A lot of the stuff that I'm saying here, I'm saying it in trust because I have a trust in you. I mean, I have never, ever, ever admitted to be a member of the IRA. Never. I've just done it here.
Hughes was the IRA commander in Jean McConville's neighbourhood the night she was abducted. He says he knows who was responsible for her killing.
I knew she was being executed. I knew that. I didn't know she was going to be buried, right, or disappeared, as they call them now.
But Hughes' voice from the grave is creating a firestorm. Northern Irish police detectives are now demanding Boston College hand over some of its secret tapes where Jean McConville's killing is mentioned. US politicians warn of the damage to the Irish peace process if the recordings are made public.
What purpose now to say that we're going to go after people who used weapons years ago when we, really the US, was almost a guarantor saying if you come forward, if you put down your weapons, we will stand by you.
In a forthright letter, Democratic Senator John Kerry weighs in too, warning Secretary of State Hillary Clinton of the dangers. As chairman of the Senate Foreign Relations Committee, I am obviously concerned about the impact that it may have on the continued success of the Northern Ireland peace process. Kerry continues, it is possible that some former parties to the conflict may perceive the effort by the UK authorities to obtain this information as contravening the spirit of the Good Friday Accords. Between Kerry and King, it is a rare bipartisan agreement. At stake is former President Clinton's foreign policy triumph, helping bring peace, the Good Friday Accords, to Northern Ireland. A process that began when President Clinton gave Catholic leader Gerry Adams a visa to visit the US. Back home in Ireland, Adams parlayed that into more power, ultimately convincing the IRA to end decades of bloodshed, to give up its guns and go into government. Kerry closes his letter to Secretary Clinton saying, I would urge you to work with the British authorities to reconsider the path they have chosen and revoke their request. When I met the British government's most senior Northern Ireland politician, Owen Paterson, I discovered there is a desire for the project, but little appetite for US interference.
I think it's a good thing to capture these memories. And it's not just an issue of the political history or the violence. I think it's a very interesting social and economic history to be written.
Why go through with this process? Why have the police embarked on this?
Well, that's a question you need to address to the police. If the police have a line of inquiry to pursue in interests of bringing a case to court, that is for them. And it is quite wrong for a politician to interfere in that process.
For McIntyre, release of the tapes is extremely personal. It could mean death. In the IRA's eyes, he could be considered an informer, a crime seldom forgiven.
I feel that there's always a possibility of somebody throwing a petrol bomb at the house or throwing an improvised grenade through the window. We're dealing with people here who buried Jim McConville on a beach, 30 miles up the road.
McIntyre can only hope the US courts reject the Northern Irish police demand that Boston College deliver up the tapes. As the archive manager questions whether Boston College deserves to have the tapes at all.
Boston College is no longer a fit and proper place to keep these interviews. The archive should be closed down, and the interviews should be returned to the people who gave them, because they're not safe.
Not safe too for Jerry Adams, who many Catholics believe may be the ultimate target of this police investigation.